Hi, I'm Paul Sanger from the Finance News Network, and today we're talking with Chariot Corporation CEO and founder Shanthar Pathmanathan. Welcome, Shanthar.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Let's kick off the interview today. The US. Why are you focused on the US?
Paul, we see the US as a critical opportunity. It's the latest play for ASX lithium juniors at the moment. The US is about 10 years behind Australia, and in terms of its lithium sector, Australia responded to China, got off to a great start. The US is now responding in an EV market sense, and it's got those great ripe opportunities where the lithium is at surface. The sector is largely undeveloped at this point. It's got its first two mines coming on stream. There's a huge market opportunity in terms of an actual domestic EV market there in the US as well. So we see mining coming back to the US and that lithium sector starting to surge from here on out. So we're positioned as one of the two big hard rock lithium players in the US at the moment.
Okay, so let's just talk about your project. So what's your flagship project currently in the US?
Yeah, good question. Our flagship project is the Black Mountain Lithium Project. It's a hard rock lithium project. We had to beat off a pretty large company, $1 billion market cap, NASDAQ listed company, to get a hold of this project. It's one of two pegmatite provinces that are being operated on by the juniors, ASX juniors. So the other one is South Dakota. Our project, the Black Mountain Project, is in Wyoming. We've got a stronghold in Wyoming at the moment, right? We've got 6 projects aside from the Black Mountain Project. We're targeting spodumene. Spodumene at surface, it's visible. Excellent grades so far from 2 pretty significant rock chip sampling programs. The next phase of work will be the drilling to test the targets and to really understand how much of the spodumene bearing ore there is at that Black Mountain project.
Okay, so you mentioned you got 5 other projects. So what's the next one that you've got a keen focus on at the moment?
So we've got 6 projects. The way I see it, these are part of our exploration pipeline. The other projects probably in order of priority would be Copper Mountain and then South Pass. So both have got historical artisanal mining for lithium minerals. Both have got documented lithium minerals at surface. That's certainly a characteristic of our entire US lithium portfolio. We've targeted assets with lithium minerals at surface, similar to what the early Australian lithium companies had about 10 years ago in Australia, and which have now given rise to these mega multi-billion-dollar deposits in Australia.
And all your projects that you have in Wyoming, are these brownfield projects or are they greenfield projects?
The US as a whole and Wyoming in particular is unexplored for lithium, right? So there's certainly some literature that dating back to the 1940s identifying lithium at surface in the various pegmatites. We've got something like 700 pegmatites in Wyoming. They are not greenfield, they're a little bit more advanced than greenfield because there's some existing literature on them. Mineralization can be seen at surface. Lithium industry as a whole in the US is very undeveloped and early in its development. Currently, the only producing lithium mine in the US is the Silver Peak mine, which is a 5,000 ton per annum facility, right? Insignificant in the global lithium supply context. All of the major developments will happen from here on out.
So clearly you've got a lot on your hand, some great projects by the sound of it that you're trying to develop. Tell us about the team that's going to help you with the next sort of phase of work.
Yeah, so let me start on the corporate side first. I previously worked at Macquarie in New York and then in Australia, and then also Deutsche Bank in Australia, oil and gas and chemicals most of the time. So I'm the founder and CEO of the company. We've got our chairman was previously the CEO of Macquarie in North America, Murray Bleach, and then Frederick Forney is an ex-Macquarie managing director who's also on our board. He will be an executive director with the company. On the geological side, we're fortunate to have a man by the name of Neil Stewart. So Neil was founding chairman of Orocobre, which is now Allkem. Neil introduced me to the vast team that I now work with in the US. So notably, we've got Dr. Edward Max Baker. Max was previously chief geologist at Newcrest and later MIM or Mount Isa. And he's got a gold project over in Idaho at the moment. So the corollary of that is that we will inherit his team of about 12 or so people currently, and they've already been helping us advance these projects. That team includes people from other geologists, geophysicists, geotechnicians, field crew, and most importantly, land managers. We've got one of the largest land holdings for lithium in the United States of America. So that's where it becomes important to have really good landmen, and that we have.
And also having that Macquarie connection at some point down the line, project financing will come nicely into play and help hopefully bring the projects to fruition, yeah?
Yeah, over time I see that being more relevant. You know, short term, we've got other sources of capital.
And then tell us a bit more, what are your thoughts on claystone hosted lithium?
Look, I think claystone has a big part to play in the global lithium supply equation. Claystone is orders of magnitude larger in terms of the net lithium contained in the resources than hard rock lithium. However, there's no current production of lithium carbonate from claystone hosted lithium. Claystone hosted lithium is a large scale, longer term opportunity. Shorter term, we intend to keep those claystone hosted assets, some of which we operate and others we have divested off to other companies to operate for us. The hard rock lithium will very much be our short-term focus, right? And that's what we will spend about 80% of our capital and time developing in the short term.
I guess it's an obvious question, why so many projects in your portfolio?
The availability of lithium assets with mineralization at surface is a luxury of the time we're in today. It's very much an early mover advantage we are seeing there. And so to that end, we want to seize on these opportunities with lithium mineralization at surface, bring them into our portfolio, and then figure out how to advance those, whether it be on our balance sheet or whether we continue to do the various divestments we've done. But we think the key is to have assets where the mineralization is there. And then in terms of, you know, management and capital, right? I think those are problems we can then solve down the road. So we see it as a luxury of our time that we've got these assets. Similar to the beginning of other industries like the oil industry a couple of hundred years ago, where they had oil assets which seeps at surface. It was for that reason, to seize on the opportunity to acquire these assets with mineralizations at surface. That's why we've got so many assets.
Bit of an obvious question, but tell us why you have so many projects in your portfolio. How do you see that as an advantage for Chariot?
The US has got these opportunities that are pretty ripe for exploration, right? So assets with lithium mineralization at surface. And as I said, the US is 10 years behind Australia. So to that end, we think this is a luxury of our time, that we have these opportunities. So we think it's prudent to acquire and bring these into our portfolio. And certainly we've done that to date. We have, as part of that process, also divested 4 assets to 4 public companies. Our cost there was about $1.5 million US, and we're able to successfully execute on those divestments for total proceeds of $16.5 million USD. So those assets are by default on other people's balance sheets. They will be operated and funded by other public companies, giving us some additional capital as well to focus on our core assets, which are the Black Mountain and Resurgent projects.
Wyoming, water supply, all good?
With our process, it's hard rock lithium, right? So it's not the brine and the claystone and all that. So we've got a lot of claystone, but the water with hard rock is a minimal issue. It's just the processing requirement, right? It's not for the actual, like with brine, you're actually literally depleting a reservoir. And you can't pull stuff out unless you have water rights, okay? With our hard rock lithium, minimal water required, and then moreover, Wyoming is not that dry of a state, right? So, it's
And with the sort of the permitting, who owns the land where your projects are?
These are called unpatented claims. Right? They're administered by the Bureau of Land Management, the federal body, US federal government. We are the owner of those claims, right? So we've paid or acquired. We've done 3 deals with 2 different vendors. We have staked most of our own ground, right? So we're the registered owner with the Bureau of Land Management. That entails some payments every year. Annual holding cost is about 750,000 Australian dollars per year. So it's a pretty substantial cost, but we've also got a pretty large land position in the US. Our company's underlying 100% interest in these claims. Some of our geologists do have a minority interest in some of the subsidiaries that we used to operate over there. But so we're the owner, but it's federal ground, right? We have the rights to the mineral endowment of that ground. There are situations where cattle ranchers have got grazing rights. Even during exploration, the cattle ranchers can temporarily bring their cattle onto the property, graze it. They have no underlying title. They have no freehold title. As required, they'll be moved off. And in terms of converting these to mining leases, they will all have to be removed from the properties longer term.
And have you got any neighbours that currently have assets digging spodumene, or in Wyoming? Any other big companies around
No,
when you said Wyoming, I can't think of one that I've heard something. I've heard Oregon, Nevada, and what have you. But first time I've heard Wyoming.
Yeah, so we had to go through a competitive auction process to get hold of this property, right? So there was a couple of bidders. $1 billion market cap company.
Yeah, interesting.
But once we secure that property, we realised that good drill results from this property is going to trigger competition, right? So we've taken out the whole state in terms of opportunities. We've got 6 other swarms of pegmatites. We have taken out some 700 pegmatites in our portfolio in Wyoming. So the way I see it, this is, it could be the Gulf of Mexico for lithium, right? Sitting in the heart of the US. It's incumbent on us to get control of that early, right, before the competition can move in. South Dakota is the next state, and there's a bit of activity over there. There's another ASX listed company that's just drilled into some spodumene bearing pegmatites there. So same geology, but Wyoming, it's more suitable, I think, for developing a mine. It has a population of 600,000 people, right? Bodes well in terms of developing a mine. And it's already a resource state. It produces a coal, uranium, oil. So it's an ideal position for us to be. And we've taken a strategic position there by taking out all of the available opportunities preemptively.
And if everything, all the stars align, everything goes to plan, when do you think the earliest you can bring Black Mountain on to actually production?
Realistically, 4.5 to 6 years. Yeah, that's a realistic picture. I think given it is a critical mineral for the United States, government intervention may play a role. There's still considerable work to be done, exploration studies, feasibility studies, and then the various permits to be obtained from the government agencies. So I think realistically, 4.5 to 6 years is a good timeline for that.
Which actually, it sounds when you say it's a long time, but actually, for a lithium project, it's not. And hopefully by then there'll be some carbonate and hydroxide processing plants that will be hopefully close by that you can send your hard rock to.
Yeah, correct. So we've already been approached by some strategics in the US, car makers and so on. You raise a good point, Paul. So instead of focusing on what happens next year and the year after, short term, I think we need to worry about what happens 2030 onwards, because there's some serious deficits that are being predicted for that time period. So as a company, our mindset's focused on a little bit longer term than the market currently.
And I also think from an investor point of view now is they're looking for the new plays, and particularly Australian listed companies that have that focus in the US, because anyone knows the US, it is ramping up. It's still in its infancy, as you say, and the money that's going to be thrown at these new projects, the big guys are going to just sit there, and then that's going to be your biggest problem with the big guys looking to take the assets on their hands before you can bring them to fruition. Which but that's a good problem to have, fighting off the big boys, yeah.
Well, that's always a good problem to have. We've started to entertain the big boys, so to speak, already through various channels and conversations. But I'll tell you this: so the US, when it wants to, right? Okay, because it does through the capital market means, right? It has the ability to respond at will to a problem at hand. So we saw that with shale. So the US is now the largest oil producer in the world, right? So they saw their vulnerability geopolitically, right, to being on other regions for oil. And in the last 15 years, they've developed a very difficult asset class, the shale oil and gas asset class, to become the largest oil producer on the planet, yeah? So a similar way, mining is somewhat dormant in the US at the moment. They went through the urbanization trends, 70 years ago. All the big mining companies, copper companies, steel players, have subsided in the US, but the US has got the population, it's got the capital, it's got the wherewithal to respond.
It's got the money.
Yeah, it's got the money, that's right. So I see the mining sector coming back in the US with some volition in the near term. And we're already seeing signs of that. So to that end, we're lucky to have the team we have. We've got about 15 people on the ground, very experienced. We've got one of the best exploration teams in the country at the moment working with us. Again, if you look at the pedigree of our geologist, Neil Stewart, ex-founding chairman of Oro Cobre, Max Baker, previously chief geologist at Newcrest, these all bode well for attracting talent and for that part of the business to be organised.
Shanthar, many thanks for your time today. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.